What is going on, Obscure Mic people? Bark coming at you again with a off-location video, because why not? And today, we're checking out something a little different. It is the Comica Linkflex AD5 audio interface. A very interesting audio interface. Comica did send this to me for the sake of my review. They didn't pay me, nothing like that. They sent me the gear, want my opinion. Got my opinion, gave them my opinion. Now it's time for you guys to know my opinion. I'll go to a close-up shot of the interface soon, but just for the sake of knowing some specs on this interface, it is 24-bit, 48 kilohertz. It is battery powered. Dual USB-C, multiple I/O, up to 65 dB of gain range, which is true. It does have that gain output. The dynamic range on this thing is supposedly excellent. I believe 115 dB. I can't remember what it was. It's up there. It's got good dynamic range as well. It would be at the top of Julian Krause's like top 5 or 6 interfaces. So what's the deal with this thing? Is it as great as it sounds already? 24, 48, great dynamic range, 65 dB of gain, lots of I/O, very portable, battery charged, screen here. We've got a screen. There's a lot to talk about here, and I mean a lot. Before I get way too into it, this is Comica's first attempt at a true audio interface, and the first attempt is pretty good, but not perfect. Not even close to perfect. Actually, it's like 50-50. That being said, I'm going to have some recommendations on who this device is for, who it's not for, and definitely going to go in depth a little bit here. We're going to talk about every piece of I/O, every button, every function, and you make the decision for yourself. I have a great use for this interface that makes it a keeper for me, not a keeper for everyone. Let's talk about it more while I run you through the ins and outs here of this interface. Well, let's first start out with the screen here, just so you can see it's not a touch screen. It is just a readout screen. These buttons here, these are touch. The front of the device, we have 2 XLR combo jacks with independent 48 volts phantom power. So you can turn on 48 volts for one and not the other, or vice versa. If you input a 1/4 inch jack, you can do instrument or not. And each of those that you enable, you're going to see light up on the screen here. So 48 volts, you'll get a white 48 volts. Instrument turns white. Gain dials for both, very good. No give, solid. That's what we want. Headphone jack with a direct monitor switch. And we also have a loopback switch. And then we've got our monitor knob, which controls the headphones on the front. The side, we don't really have anything going on there. We'll get to the top soon, but let's go to the back here. The monitor also controls the second headphone out. So for podcasting purposes, 2 headphone outs, that's great. Now, one dial to control both, that's not, but let's be happy that we got 2 headphone jacks. That's kind of rare in a device these days. Line outputs, 1/4 inch outputs on the back, 1/4 inch, always welcomed over the, red, white RCA style. Then we've got a phone in and out. So that's a TRRS in and out for the phone. We've got a USB 1 to run to a computer, tablet, phone, whatever. USB 2, tablet, phone, computer, whatever. And this other one, this is just a charging USB-C port to charge the battery. This is not a bus-powered device. If you have this hooked up to a power source, then one of your other 2 are going to go to your computer. Your computer is not going to charge this unless you plug it into the charging port, but that's not going to transfer data. So bus-powered, no. To use with a computer full-time and to keep charged, you'll need 2 cables. Now, I will say, after I say there's a power button here, which is always welcomed, and if you hold that power button down, it can toggle between English and Chinese language. I'm not that concerned about the fact that it's not bus powered because the battery lasts a really long time. I have used this for multiple hours and I'm just now at the halfway point on the battery. And to be clear, I am speaking into a dynamic right now. It is the Boya, what is it, BYM something. I don't remember. It's that dynamic mic. I reviewed it. Just look at Boya Dynamic. You'll find it. But this, this has no problem driving that microphone. Now let me get to the first con. I think so far I've spoke glowingly about the I/O. A lot of ports. So far so good. Let's start with the bad and I'll mix in the good. Bad, the headphone out is echoey, reverby, not terribly, but just enough, just a slight hint of roboticness to where you're not going to be able to do like a YouTube channel about microphones with this like I do. Like I can't use this for obscure mics because I can't tell how the mic actually sounds because there's just a slight hint of reverb. And that seems to be very common through a lot of these devices coming off Amazon as far as audio interfaces go, is that slight reverb. Let's get on to weird thing number 2, the mix dial. The mix dial is basically just controlling the volume that's coming out of the out ports, the 3.5 millimeter out point. That's really all this does that I configure is control the out. It's not really so much a mix. It's the out and in. So I guess that is kind of a mix, but it's the out and in of the 3.5 millimeter jacks on the back, which there's more about those. We'll get to them. We've got a mode switch here, which changes the mode from streaming to recording. Now, if I was to push this and change it to recording, then you get the audio interface style tracks. You're going to get tracks for the 2 XLR jacks, and I believe your loop back. It's going to create separate tracks for everything. Not great for streaming. When you're streaming, you want to make everything a mix. So that's why it's on stream. I've got this recording straight into my device, and every noise that comes in and out of this thing is going to come left channel and right channel of the video. So that's that. So this essentially, where it's battery powered and you can go in the stream mode, everything's going to come through just fine live. Both sides, both speakers, everything. Good to go. I like that about this device. We do also have a mute button, a touch capacitive mute button. I'll hit that now. It does take a little bit of a press. It's not a real gentle thing there. Now the next button down, we have denoise. Now while I welcome this, which is essentially a noise gate, it is very aggressive, and there are 2 levels. So right now it's off. When I hit on, it's going to change this little square to 1. Now that's the easiest, the gentlest of the 2. And as you can tell, it's pretty aggressive. Now watch what happens when we go to level 2. Now we're on level 2. And it's even more aggressive to the point to where it's cutting off my words at the front and the end. Very aggressive. Too aggressive. Now we've got that off. I don't like using that denoise feature unless I'm in a very noisy environment. And even then, it's just a little too aggressive. And there is no firmware updates that are going to happen for this. It's not able to be updated through firmware. Now, I have contacted Comica and let them know my gripes and complaints about this machine, and they claim they're going to implement my advice into the next iteration of an interface. Hopefully they do. Then you've got direct monitoring down below, denoise. That's if you hit the direct button, it's going to, you can do a stereo direct option. It just changed to 2 circles instead of 1. And then there was also an input monitoring, which I turned off because that cuts off the headphones. Direct with the circle both sides, no stereo, just direct mono. Loopback button, when you hit the loopback, that's going to light that up as well. Turn it back off. So far, so good, right? Like there's a few little quirks here and there, but everything's okay so far. Mostly. Then we've got the FX button. Now, when you hit the FX button, it's going to immediately go to the EQ and it's going to change to deep. On the deep setting here, give you more bass, more EQ. And on this microphone, I think that's useful. You hit the FX again, and it's going to go to a natural tone on the microphone. You hit it again, and we're going to get bright. Now we've got a bright setting This is going to be very, clarity driven, bright. I think the EQ settings are actually useful and they're actually decent. I'm actually kind of a fan of those. So there is something besides the I/O, the 2 ports, the independent 48 volts phantom power. There's something that is a win for this device, as I do think the EQ works pretty well. You hit the FX again and the EQ goes off. You don't have deep, natural, bright. It means you're at the regular sound of the microphone until you hit FX again and it goes back to deep. Now, if you hold the FX, it switched the orange from EQ to orange reverb. Now, we don't have reverb on yet because the same thing, you got to hit the button. So we hit the button and now we've got a room reverb. We hit it again and now we've got a stage reverb, which sounds about the same. Then you hit it again and we've got a hall reverb, which is a little more echoey, but whatever. Now we're back off on the reverb. You can press and hold effects to get back over to the EQ side, to which you can then scroll through those settings once again. Now, real quickly, now that we've went through these buttons and their functions, I've got to say the meters, while I welcome them, do not seem to be very accurate. Anytime I talk, it pretty much says I'm clipping. I know that's not the case. I can drive this down quite a bit and it still hits the red. Drive it down some more even, and it's still almost, okay, there we go. It's not hitting the red. It's kind of working there, but let's go back up because we are on a dynamic here. Basically, the levels are, it's almost useless because when you're not clipping, it says you're clipping. Not great. Let's talk about the other feature here, of which kind of sucks on this Comica. I'm going to hook up a condenser mic now and turn on 48 volts phantom power and discuss to you what happens. All right, so now we've got a condenser mic plugged in, and I just want you to know the gain is all the way down. It cannot go any lower. It is all the way down. One of our first major problems with this device is there is literally no way to control your levels beyond, or below, I should say, what you're hearing now. So if this output is too hot, too bad. That's just, it is what it is. This is the minimal volume, the minimal gain range for a condenser microphone. This thing is just wired and set too high. So there's no way to bottom this out. You cannot mute this mic by simply turning the gain down. You have to mute it. You have to actually hit the button to mute the microphone. So if you like to record really quiet like most people do and then boost in post, this is not for you. Not going to work for you. Now, the levels don't clip in my headphones, and I imagine they're probably fine coming into the recording, but that's still a problem. Still a major, major problem. The fact that to use a condenser, you either have to speak quietly or the condenser has to be one that needs a lot of gain to be driven. It's just not going to work for people who use primarily condensers. And let's face it, we all mostly go back and forth between condensers and dynamics. We like to use all kinds of different microphones, and you cannot turn this down. This is the minimal volume, and to me, that's crazy. Let's go back to the dynamic just to be safe. So again, your gain range is great. This thing outputs plenty of power, but for a condenser, just a little crazy. All right, here's the next thing that's just kind of strange about this device. Your inputs on the back here, the only way I could get the out to work is TRRS. A regular TRS cable, I was getting nothing. So it's TRRS in and out or TRRS out. No in between, nothing else there. And that is the device in a nutshell. Now for my final thoughts. Well, Comica, I'll give you one thing. You just about nailed it. You just about absolutely nailed it. This device is really cool to me because it's very portable and you can take it on the go. It doesn't need to be hooked up to a computer. Your I/O means you can hook it up to almost anything, a phone. I want to say a camera, but I have not tested if that TRRS out can be adapted to a TRS into a camera. I assume that it can, but I don't know that for sure. That being said, it does come with one TRRS cable and one USB-C to C with an A adapter linked on. I'll show you a picture of that. And it's a pretty big cable too, so that's nice. But yeah, the I/O, you can pretty much run to anything on battery power, and for that matter, it's pretty cool. But the fact that the gain range is so high and that a condenser is just automatically going to be driven to about negative 6 to 8 dB, that's not going to work for everybody. Not going to work for me. Now for dynamics, it works. It's got great gain range. It can push everything. So for that, if you're a dynamics person, it may still be for you. The noise gate, quite frankly, sucks, but I guess at least you have the option. The EQ, pretty good in my opinion. Loopback feature works well. Reverb works, but it's just kind of cheesy. Like there's reverb on all these cheaper, weird devices now. I don't think reverb is going to be used very much here because I don't think this is a very good rig for musicians. Wouldn't recommend it for musicians. Podcasters, definitely going to work for podcasters because podcasters should be working with dynamics. There's not much room in the podcast market for condensers, in my opinion, because most people are doing the podcast from their home space, and dynamics just cut off more background noise than condensers. So for podcasters, I think it works great, especially with that loopback feature and the TRRS out to a phone, which also brings audio in, which leads me to my perfect use case for this thing. Again, musicians, don't bother. Condenser mic lovers, don't bother. Podcasters, two-man shows especially, two-person shows, this is going to be fantastic for. And again, that battery's going to last a long time. You could even hook up a power bank or whatever. You can run this to a computer and a phone simultaneously. You can run it to two phones, USB-C, to get a 2-camera setup for a video podcast. Even more, actually, you can go to 4 phones because of the I/O in the back and do a 4-camera shot. There is a use and a market for this thing. It's just flawed heavily. Perfect use case scenario for me is every once in a while I like to do reaction videos on the Stuck in My Generation channel, which used to be the Back Row Studios channel. Now it's Stuck in My Generation channel because I have a podcast called that, and that's music based, and everything else I do, reaction video, is music based. So feel free to subscribe to that, by the way. This is amazing for reaction videos because I did a reaction video. I'll put a card here, Metallica's Lux Eterna. I used this on that, and while the music was playing through my I had 2 phones set up. Had music playing through my phone on the TRRS jack, I believe, and I had a camera phone with a camera with the USB ran in, and it worked beautifully because when I wanted to comment on the song, the level of the music, there was like an auto ducking feature. Can't turn it off, so know that. But whenever I spoke, the song got quieter and faded out while I was speaking and made me prominent over the music. Then when I stopped, the music faded back into a louder level. It never went away, but it scooped out for my voice and then came back when I was done talking. For reaction videos, that is perfect. That is fantastic. So if you're going to have a dynamic microphone and just doing reaction videos or YouTube-based videos where music's coming in and out, but your voice still needs to be top priority, this device is gold. Absolute gold. But again, it's not perfect because of the downfalls that I spoke of. That being said, I really like it because not for every use. That's the problem. This can't be used for everything, but for my other purposes outside of obscure mics, this thing's great. I can handle the very tiny little bit of reverb in the headphones, little tiny bit for podcasting and such, doesn't bother me. For mic monitoring purposes and doing mic reviews, not going to work. But for everything else that I do, it does work with flaws. So Comica, it's a pretty good first stab. It's about 189 bucks. I think that's a fair price mostly, but I think the next iteration, if you fix the issues that I spoke of in this video, you've got one hell of a contender to battle big name companies. And I mean that. But as of right now, your use case has to be super specific for this, and it has to work and fit. But I'll say one thing, if those leveling meters were just accurate, that would be a big bump up for me. That's a pretty big downfall, as is the condenser issue with the fact that you can't turn the gain all the way down. Otherwise, I think this device is pretty cool. Do I recommend it? For reaction videos, absolutely. For podcasts, mostly. For everything else, it's a no. So I do like this device. Again, it's small enough and portable enough to take wherever you want to go, just for the sake of seeing how small and portable. It's built well. The battery life is fantastic. The I/O is fantastic, mostly. The out should be TRS, not TRRS. That's a problem, but it is what it is. I think it's pretty cool for the most part. Link in the description if you want to grab it. Again, I'm not saying that it's a world beater or anything like that, but there's a lot of good and a lot of bad. It's a 50-50 device. You just got to make that decision for yourself. So, Obscure Mike's Comica AD5 is out of here. Comica, thanks for sending it over. Definitely look forward to what you're going to do next, especially if it's this same device. Maybe do this device in a different color, fix the features. It can be the AD5 Mark II. Gold. See you guys next time on Obscure Mike's. Peace out.